back to another episode of From the Couch Sports. My name is Connor and I'll be your host. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. I got a few things I want to talk about today. We haven't had like the craziest, last week or so of sports. This last weekend there wasn't really any big boxing events. None of the major promotions for MMA had events. But we did have the NCAA tournament. We had the Final Four. That has wrapped up, and we are preparing for the national championship here coming up on Monday. Outside of that, we've got a couple moves I want to talk about in the NFL. The first thing, I think this is a big move. This is a rule change for the NFL. They have decided to change the overtime rules in the NFL. So for the longest time, basically, like the first team that gets the ball, if they score a touchdown, the game is over. The other team does not get another opportunity to touch the ball in overtime. And this has just been changed. The only thing is it's just for the playoffs. So basically now playoff teams, if you go into overtime, both teams get one opportunity to possess the ball. If they both end up scoring, then it does revert back to more of a sudden death format where first team to score wins. But I really like this. I think like just in the last couple years, we have some kind of big examples of these moments. There's been a few involving Tom Brady. There was the Tom Brady Chiefs situation. And then last year specifically, well, I guess this last football season, the 2021 season, the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes game, which was just like this phenomenal game back and forth. And it ended up like Chiefs get the ball in overtime and they win. And that was all there is to it. Now with the new overtime rules, Josh Allen would have got the ball again and had his opportunity to match that and, potentially win the game and go deeper into the playoffs. So I think this rule change is a very big one. It's been a long time coming. In my opinion, I still like the college football overtime rules better than this. You do have a couple like crazy examples in college football, like where a game goes to 6 overtimes or whatever. But overall, college football's overtime system it's very, very much entertaining. I believe they start at like the 30-yard line and they get opportunities to score, and then they just kind of keep going back and forth until someone wins the game and the other team doesn't score. I think like this rule change, while it might not be perfect, I think it is a great step in the right direction. I do want to see this rule evolve here in the future as well, because like my thing is like, let's say this rule was in effect last year in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes gets the ball first, scores a touchdown. Josh Allen gets the ball, scores a touchdown. Now it's back to what we were in before. First team with the ball that scores wins. And I guess that's better than what we have now, where if you get into overtime, the other team doesn't even get an opportunity to score. But I do think that they could further it. The other thing that's interesting is like, normally if you get the ball in overtime, you want to receive the ball. Now, you want to probably kick the ball off in overtime, at least in the playoffs, because you kick the ball to the other team, they drive the field, they kick a field goal. Now if we get a touchdown, we win this game. If we get a touchdown, we can tie it and extend it. So I think, with the rule change, I think that's going to change how teams navigate the overtime. But like I said, this is only a rule change for the playoffs. If this is a regular season game, it's the same old overtime rules that we're used to. But I did think that was a big change, a good change as well. And then we did have kind of a not a huge blockbuster trade like we've seen. Like I think this offseason has kind of spoiled us with major trade after major trade. So we're kind of expecting like what's the next big one? Like we saw Tyreek Hill, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, all these superstar names traded. But Devontae Parker is traded from the Patriots for a 2023 third-round pick, and the Patriots are also receiving, on top of Devontae Parker, they're getting a 2022 fifth-round pick. So, in regards to the Patriots, I think that this Devontae Parker probably comes in and he's one of the better receivers in their locker room. Also, like, if you're looking at it from the Dolphins' perspective, they got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. they've already got, and they brought in Cedric Wilson from the Cowboys too. So they've got a lot of depth at receiver, and they're like, is Devontae Adams, or not Devontae Adams? Obviously, they keep him. Devontae Parker, like he's had issues staying on the field. And he's played there. I think he's played 7 years in Miami. So I think it was time for them to move on. And I do think it's a good fit with New England. I don't think this is like a blockbuster trade though. Like I said, one thing that's interesting is like the value that teams have on players. Like you would think that Amari Cooper would go for a bit higher than Devontae Parker in a trade, but it's actually kind of the opposite. So that's just been interesting to me. Staying on football real quick, I want to talk about these rumors that are going out. Obviously, I'm a big Jets fan, so a lot of these rumors are fueled by, nonsense Jets beat writers. They're coming out here saying that the Jets are doing their due diligence and keeping their eyes on A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel. It's like, let's pick the 3 best receivers that are on their rookie contract and say the Jets are interested. It's like, no shit, the Jets are interested. Any team in the NFL that has the cap space or any kind of draft picks to trade for these guys would be interested. But the reality of it is, Deebo Samuel, he plays on the 49ers, a team that just traded up a bunch of draft picks to get their future QB, Trey Lance, coming into his second year. He didn't start his rookie season. They're going to have high expectations for this guy. They invested their future for him. And why in the world, going into that with the expectations, with a roster that's, borderline Super Bowl contending, why would you trade your best offensive weapon? And like I know Kittle's also, he's definitely up there because he's one of the best tight ends in football, but like at least at the receiver position, and like not even only that, but like Deebo offers so much more for this team than just a receiving threat. So that makes absolutely zero sense to me. I think they figure out a way to pay him. The other two, A.J. Brown is on a contending team, the Titans. And last year, they would have gone further in the playoffs if it wasn't for Tannehill having multiple turnovers against the Bengals. So it's like you're the best receiver on a continuous playoff team that's contending for, maybe a Super Bowl eventually. Why in the world would they trade that? And I understand the argument with the money thing. Maybe these teams don't have the money to afford the big $25 million a year contract or whatever these guys want. But I think, these players don't come across every year. Like, these are very good players. They're some of the best receivers in the NFL. You don't just get rid of them just for some draft picks because you don't want to pay them money. That just makes no sense, especially when you're on a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl. And then we get to the last team. I still don't think that there's a chance DK Metcalf is traded. But I will acknowledge, if there were to be one of these guys traded, it would probably be DK, just because it's clear the Seattle Seahawks are going through a full-fledged rebuild. And, DK he's going to want to get paid. But also, if you're Seattle, it's like, maybe we can turn this thing around in 2-3 years, and DK's still going to be in his prime. He's a young guy. And we don't have a giant QB contract with Russell Wilson still on the roster, so I'm sure they can come up with the money to pay him. But that, I guess that would be the only one I could see. Like, if they just completely want to start scratch, start completely over. Maybe they draft a QB this year. They want to get a pick for a receiver that they can pair up with them. Like, I guess they could go that route. But regardless, I don't think this is going to happen. And it's funny because the Jets beat writers are feeling all this. Like the guy that writes for ESPN, Rich Cimini, he's come out with multiple articles talking about how the Jets are interested. And it's like, obviously the Jets are interested in a blue chip receiver because they tried to trade for Tyreek Hill. But also they're the Jets, and they're not going to just steal one of these players away from these teams that also want these players. Like, you can't just pick, Tyreek Hill's situation was, understandable. You got a QB on a massive contract. They've already won a Super Bowl. You've got other guys that are getting paid big money. They can't put the money together to pay Tyreek, so they trade Tyreek. And obviously, we didn't expect to see him traded, so I get that that's the argument. Like, oh, we don't expect A.J. Brown to get traded either, but he's not gonna. So that's and if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But that's just how I see it. I think it's crazy. But Rich Samini, he keeps coming out with these articles, saying the Jets are interested. They've called these teams about it, and it's like if they've called the teams about it, if they're interested, and if the teams are even considering it, then why in the world has nothing happened yet? We've gone like a week without any major moves in the NFL, so that just makes no sense to me. But another former Seattle Seahawk, Bobby Wagner, signed with the Los Angeles Rams. So the Rams lose Von Miller, but they get a middle linebacker now, who's also a Hall of Famer. So I think that's a good move for them to kind of keep the things that they've got going currently, continue to keep them rolling. Maybe compete for another Super Bowl this coming year. So I really like that move. But yeah, like I said, this idea that just because a receiver's coming up due for a contract, they're going to get traded. I think that's, we had like, the thing too is Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, they were not on their first contracts. This isn't like guys that were, and they're entering their fourth season and they want to get paid the big money. These are guys that were already getting paid big money. They wanted more big money, and that's what happened with the trades. But moving on from that, not a whole lot of other NFL stuff. We got the NCAA Final Four just wrapped up last night. This, one of these games was horrible, and then the other one was a complete classic. So I'm gonna get into the Kansas Villanova game. Kansas started out, so props to Kansas first of all, and props to Villanova too for going into the Final Four. It's impressive no matter what the outcome of the Final Four game was. But Kansas comes out, and Agbaji, their best player, number 30, he goes 4 for 4 from 3. So he starts off the game with 12 points, and Villanova's just in a hole the whole entire game from this point on. They try to make a comeback. There was a point in the game where they closed it to a 6-point lead, and then Kansas just pulled back out and just took over the game. Kansas is just a really good, all-around team. They've got a lot of contributors. McCormick, he had a good game. He had 25 points and 9 rebounds. And then Agbaji finished with 21 total points. So those were kind of their two leaders for Kansas. And Novich, they struggled. They had a slow start, and then they were just fighting back into it from that point. And this was a tough loss. It was 81-65. But I did want to kind of recap, their journey to get here. Because in my opinion, this Duke North Carolina game, this felt like this was the national championship. And obviously no disrespect to Kansas, because I think Kansas is a phenomenal team, and I don't even know, Kansas very well might win the game tomorrow and win the national championship. But just with all the storylines playing into Duke North Carolina, I think that fed into it. But going over the opponents, so Villanova, to make the Final Four, they were the number 2 seed. They beat number 15 Delaware. They beat number 7 Ohio State, number 11 Michigan, and number 5 Houston. So Houston and Michigan, definitely tough teams. But they kind of most of their games, I don't think they were in any super close games. I think most of their games they were winning by 10 or so. I think Houston was actually somewhat close, but so they made the Final Four, and then they weren't able to get it done, unfortunately. As far as Kansas is the number 1 seed. Their first round, they played Texas Southern, a 16 seed. Then they had number 9 seed Creighton. They only won by 7. Then they had number 4 seed Providence, which was a 5-point game. Then number 10 seed Miami, which was a 16-point game. And then Villanova, which was also a 16-point game. So it's like Kansas started off being in really close games. Looked like they were going to lose to someone that they probably shouldn't. And then they just turned that around, and now they're playing teams that are a lot more difficult to beat, and they're just blowing them out. So Kansas has definitely put it together. They're on a crazy run. But then to kind of pivot to North Carolina Duke, this was like Coach K. You couldn't write this better if Coach K was going to win the tournament. This was a storybook ending by definition. Coach K was going in. I think this was his 100th matchup against North Carolina. This is the first time North Carolina and Duke have ever met in the tournament. And, this is his last year. He's already announced he's retiring. And not only is this his last year, this was his last game coaching basketball. The guy's in his 70s. He's had a Hall of Fame career. And he's been coaching Duke, I think, since 1980. So, just everything, like the story was just written for this moment. And this, unfortunately, Duke didn't win for Duke fans. But this moment, definitely lived up to the expectations. North Carolina Duke is one of the greatest rivalries in all of college sports. For sure, in college basketball, it's probably the number one. But everything was just perfect in this game, close the entire time, and then down to the wire. And it was just incredible to see. Paolo Banchero, in my opinion, is the number one overall pick in this upcoming draft. Maybe we'll see how the lottery plays out, and, maybe the team disagrees with me, but from watching everything in this tournament, this guy Banchero has all of the skills that you want in a number one overall pick. He can shoot like crazy for a big man of his size. He can shoot the three. He's got a mid-range game. He can handle the ball. He's gotten a lot better as a passer, as a defender. And he's a great athlete. He's over there jumping above people just to grab rebounds and stuff. And it's not even just his positioning when he's getting the rebounds. He's just out jumping guys, and it's fun to watch. So I really do think he took over this tournament, and even in this game, I think he had, I want to say he had 18 or 20. He took over this game, and I think he's the number one overall pick. I think it'll be cool depending on where he goes. There's a chance that he goes to the Pistons. He could go play with Cade Cunningham. He could pair up with Jalen Green on the Rockets. I think there's a lot of cool storylines that could be this is a future duo in the NBA. Obviously, we might not see them win anything big for a few years, but I think that's definitely interesting. But then outside of him, Duke had a tough game, especially towards the end. Mark Williams, their center, he's kind of in foul trouble the entire game, and he comes in at the end of the game. They're down 1 point, and he gets 2 free throws to tie the game or go up. And he misses both of them, which leads to, in my opinion, the MVP of this tournament, Caleb Love. He goes and he drains a 3, which basically sealed the game. I know Duke kind of still made a run after that, but this was the first moment where it was okay, this is probably North Carolina's game to win at this point. Williams missing those free throws is tough. It's also tough, you're not on the court for most of the game because you're in foul trouble, and then you get on the court and you're not warmed up and fully playing your best basketball, and then you're expected to hit some major shots at a key moment in the game. So, I feel for the guy. I think it's tough to, a tough weight to deal with. But also Duke had other opportunities in this game, but also Caleb Love just took this game from Duke. Duke had multiple chances to win this game, and Caleb Love just comes in for North Carolina, 28 points, and he put the game away. He had the 3 to go up by 4, and then when Duke had a quick bucket, he got the ball back. They fouled him. He had free throws to basically ice the game. It's funny. I was throughout this tournament, I've been curious, where are these NBA prospects going to go? I pull up the mock drafts. I'm just curious, where guys are ranked and stuff. And I've seen some guys, throughout the tournament, get raised up on the draft board. For example, Benedict Mathurin for Arizona. At the beginning of, the tournament, he was, fringe top 15. Maybe he's, 15 to 20. And then, towards the end, he's this guy's, consistently going to top 7 picks in the mock drafts. Caleb Love is another guy, I wasn't even seeing him on most mock drafts at the beginning. But now it's this dude deserves to probably be, a top 10 pick. Like this guy has all the skills that you want in a guard. He's a great athlete. He can finish at the rim incredibly. He's got good handles, great off the dribble, and he's hitting huge shots. Every single time in this tournament that North Carolina has needed a bucket, they give the ball to Caleb Love and he gets it done. Like there was a lot of talk like this guy, he's streaky or whatever. In the tournament at least, he's not. Like in the tournament, he's the real deal. This is a guy I think like if you're an NBA fan, I want him on my team. He's a ton of fun to watch. But also staying on North Carolina, they got a couple other guys that are awesome as well. Brady Manick, he's also another guy like he's hitting huge shots in this tournament. Like if he gets the ball and he's got space to shoot a three, I feel bad for the other team because he's probably going to hit it. He's a great shooter. He's been a key contributor to this team in this tournament run. And North Carolina just has all this momentum. Obviously Kansas got momentum too. They've blown out their last two opponents. But this is going to lead up to a very fun national championship. And then, one last guy I want to talk about for North Carolina, Armando Bacot. This guy he's consistent. Like, I watched some of the first games in the tournament, and I didn't know, like, just how good this guy is. He's fighting for rebounds, playing great defense, good putbacks. Like, he's another type of guy. Like, you just want a guy like that on your team. Manick and Bacot, I think, are both guys, like, I don't know what their ceiling is as basketball players, but I think they definitely belong on NBA rosters. But Bacot finished this game with 11 points and 21 rebounds. I think he fouled out, like, at the very end. But he also, like, rolled his ankle. He stepped on one of his teammates' foot, rolled his ankle. They carried him off, and then he started, like, kind of limping off on the sideline. I think they might have taped his ankle back up, and he went right back in and kept competing, which is another thing. It's like, seeing that happen from high-level athletes, I think it's super fun to see. These guys are, like, putting it all on the line. This is a guy, like, I'm on a bum ankle, but I'm going to give it my all, and I'm going to help my team win this ball game. And he did that for sure. So I thought that was really fun to see. Obviously, I hope that the injury wasn't very bad. I hope that he's 100% going into this game because we're playing, they got a day off and then they play right away for the national championship. And he's a very, very big contributor for this team. I think with him healthy in there, they got a good chance to win. If he's not 100%, I'm curious how things will go. The big man McCormick on Kansas is also very good big man too, so we'll see how those matchups are kind of down low. And then, kind of to touch on the journeys of these two teams as well. So Duke went through Cal State Fullerton. I've never even heard of this team in the first round. Then number 7, Michigan State. Then number 3, Texas Tech. And then Arkansas. So they had a pretty tough journey to the Final Four. But then North Carolina, being an 8 seed, had a kind of harder journey outside of one game, really. They played a number 9 seed Marquette. Then they beat number 1 seed Baylor, which was a very good game. This was like, 25-point comeback from Baylor, go to overtime, and then North Carolina was able to pull it off. Once again, Caleb Love, like, showing out. Great player to watch. Then number 4 UCLA, and then number 15 St. Peter's. So, tough journey to reach the Final Four for both teams, but now this is setting up North Carolina versus Kansas. I know a lot of people wanted Duke to win, but this is still two historic college basketball teams facing off for the national championship, and I'm super excited. I'm not even really leaning one way or the other. I think both teams are fun to watch. I don't really know, like, if I were to make a prediction, I'm not even sure, like, I would say, like, Caleb Love is the best player on North Carolina. Agbaji from Kansas, he's their best player, but I think he's more of like a 2 and 3, like he plays a lot more wing. And I think that the big matchup is going to be very interesting for both teams. But regardless, I'm really looking forward to this game. Later this week, I'm gonna, we got a big UFC pay-per-view coming up, so I'm gonna make another video kind of breaking that down. We're going to do some other things on the channel. I'm working on some documentaries and, other type of content besides just, talking sports specifically. Well, I mean, it's all going to be sports regardless, but, it won't be in the same format as the show here. But if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Comment down below what your thoughts are. How have you liked the tournament? What do you think about the new NFL rule changes? What do you want to see going forward? And once again, thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.